Australia continues to fall short on its rollout target of the vaccine. Thousands of frontline health workers are still waiting to get their jab, and we're seeing quite a row between the state and federal governments over this. Let's bring in University of Melbourne epidemiologist Tony Blakely for analysis. Tony Blakely, thanks very much for your time. We're nowhere near the targets the federal government had set. Where does the blame lie as we see this war of words between New South Wales, Queensland and the federal counterparts?
I'm not privy to exactly where the blame lies. I do think there's been some confusion here, though, because the states are rightly thinking, well, we need to hold back some dose to vaccinate other people. The feds are saying, well, just go ahead and vaccinate them and we'll get the second dose to you. And there's a little bit of distrust there. And we saw that right at the beginning of the pandemic when the states were concerned that the feds weren't offering the right advice and they went their own way, and we achieved elimination despite the feds. So there is a bit of animosity here. That all said, this will blow over. We will get the vaccine coverage up. It's okay that it's taken a bit longer because we're a good posse, but Brisbane highlights to us the need to protect our borders until such time as we get that vaccine coverage up.
So you have heard the Prime Minister again today, also the Chief Medical Officer, saying it's not a race, but in a way it is, isn't it? Because we want to avoid these next waves like, I'm not saying the Brisbane situation is necessarily another wave, but these pockets, these outbreaks, we need to avoid those.
Yeah, we want to avoid them, but we're still in a good place. We're better than most places in the world. But it would be nice, wouldn't it, to be having 20, 30, 40% vaccine coverage, because we know that will dampen down the ability for an explosive outbreak, and that's what we would really like to see. So we want this to happen as fast as possible without it being messy and people getting caught up twice on the register or getting dropped off the register. There are infrastructure issues there, as well as the logistics supply. Now, the AstraZeneca manufacturer in Australia will really kick in soon. I think 1 million doses a week, something like that, which would be fantastic.
Yeah, it's really encouraging to hear your optimism on that, Tony Blakely, in terms of the local manufacture and how then we should start to see it rolling out and picking up quickly.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And just a reminder, if you can, for our viewers, how effective is AstraZeneca as an option?
It's actually doing pretty well. The marketing hasn't been that good by AstraZeneca, though, but let's talk about the facts. It's probably got about an 80% chance of stopping me get really sick or die if I was to get it. That's not bad, actually. It's not at 95% of Pfizer, but it's still pretty good. There's also the other part, which is it stops the transmission through the population. So by meaning that I won't pick it up from you if you're infected is good. It's about 60, 80% on that. But as well, it will stop if you were vaccinated and you're unfortunate enough to be infected, you'll be infected for a lesser duration with less peak intensity. So there's going to be a lovely spiral up effect. I hypothesize, I believe, in the way that the vaccine will dampen down the transmission. Indeed, today we just launched a tool. So we did an agent-based modelling for the Victorian roadmap. We've just launched today a tool with 648 scenarios with different vaccine coverage across Australia, different scenarios we use, different effect of the vaccine at reducing transmissibility. And that tool is now there for the public to use. And you can see that if we get that vaccine coverage up, we can really push down at the back end, so about August, something like that, once people my age are starting to be vaccinated, and really dampen things down. But until we get at least 40% of or so of us vaccinated, we do not want a Brisbane situation getting out of hand because we won't yet be resilient.
Yeah, and this analysis that you've done with your colleagues at the University of Melbourne, it poses the overarching question: when can we get back to normal? What in simple terms, what's your gut? Of all the options you had, what's the most likely in terms of the timing for that?
Yeah, so we don't know exactly. So it's a bit of a rhetorical question. But if we don't see viruses come through which break through and become resistant to vaccines, so the good scenario, we should be back to something like normal by Christmas. It won't be as easy to travel overseas. There'll still be flare-ups happening here and there when we open the borders, but that would be not a bad scenario. The scenario that a lot of us are worried about, I'm not saying it will happen, we're just worried about it, is that the virus will mutate in a way to become resistant to the vaccines. Now, even if that does happen, we can chase along and get ahead of it because these vaccines, it's very easy, well, relatively easy, to adapt them to keep up with the virus. So I think there's the two scenarios there.
Yeah, well, let's hope that the Christmas timeline works and we can have a normal one as opposed to last year. Tony Blakely, appreciate it so much. Your analysis, thanks so much.
Pleasure. Thank you.